Good evening to all. Thank you so much for being a part of this special event, celebrating scholarship and innovation. Today, we gather to honor faculty and staff across the university who've received prestigious awards and grants during the past 3 years. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce Chancellor Felix Matos Rodriguez, our fearless leader, who himself is a renowned scholar in the fields of women's, Puerto Rican, Caribbean, and Latino studies and migration. Chancellor?
Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you for the kind words and also for all that you do for the university and for all your efforts in organizing today's event. So I would also like to welcome everybody to the City University of New York Celebration of Scholars. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today, we come together to honor the achievements of hundreds of faculty and staff members from across the Cuny system who were awarded major external grants and other funding for research and scholarship from the academic years 2019 and 2021. In essence, today we come to celebrate Cuny's impact on the New York community and the rest of the world as foundations and other external funders have put their faith in the university's ability to drive meaningful, lasting change through serious, innovative research. Whether it is in the natural sciences, the social sciences, the arts, technology, law, social work, or business, the world recognizes that Cuny's community of scholars are an indispensable brain trust dedicated to scientific and historical truth in service of building a more just and equitable society. I congratulate all of you who have worked so hard on behalf of your students, your discipline, and the university in securing a truly phenomenal amount of collective funding, and for reaffirming to the world what a cutting-edge institution of research Cuny is and will always be. This evening, we offer you a program consisting of stimulating discussion and speeches that are reflective of Cuny's diverse and distinguished community of scholars. Since we're talking about encouraging research here at Cuny, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our Associate Vice Chancellor for Research, Tamara Schneider, who will be kicking off this evening's event and we'll do a fireside chat with four special honorees. So thank you and welcome, Tamara.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction, Chancellor Rodriguez, and for your commitment to Cuny research and scholarship. So as mentioned, I'm Tamara Schneider. I'm so pleased to have been able to have joined Cuny as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Research just about a year and a half ago. And I'm very pleased to have this opportunity today to, with all of you, celebrate the excellence of our Cuny faculty and staff for their outstanding scholarship and their externally recognized scholarship indeed. This scholarship so often directly impacts the lives of our students, not just their scholarly training, but also their preparedness for the next stage of their life journey. Whether in the arts, humanities, social or natural sciences, university research improves lives and it truly serves society. And we've seen that certainly in the past year, unlike any in my lifetime for sure. It has great public impact, and you have all had great public impact. And I thank you, and I sincerely congratulate each and every one of the awardees for your recognition tonight. I also understand personally the extra effort and dedication and persistence that it takes. I applaud each of you for your outstanding efforts. I'm so pleased to be joined today by four panelists who were selected among those many who were honoring for this event. I'll just briefly introduce each of them, and then I will pose several questions that will help us learn from their incredible experiences. So I have joining us during this fireside chat, the director of the Hunter College Center for Cancer Health Disparities Research and associate professor of biological sciences, Sean Agunwabi. I have also professor and dean's fellow of humanities and social sciences, the academic coordinator for that group, Katie Chomsky. Also joining us for the fireside chat is associate professor of ethnic and race studies, Sonia Munchie. Also joining us is University Dean of Continuing Education and Workforce Programs, Angie Dada-Kamet. And I'm so grateful to each of you for joining this evening in this fireside chat. So I have several questions, and one of them is just really very broadly, what has been a real high point for you in your career for your securing funding for your scholarship? So, and I guess I'll just ask, maybe Sean, I'll ask you go first. I can see you first in my screen. I'll ask Sean and then Katie, Sonia, and Angie, if you could just go in that order. And if you want to pass, you can pass anytime.
Well, for me, without a doubt, the high point of my funding has been the receipt of the U54 grant that I got from the National Cancer Institute. This grant enabled us to partner with Temple University and the Fox Chase Cancer Center in Philadelphia to develop a comprehensive cancer health disparities program to reduce cancer health disparities in the New York City, New Jersey, Pennsylvania region. It really has been a phenomenal opportunity that I've been able to participate in as the contact principal investigator of that grant. The goal of the partnership is really, first and foremost, to develop a strong and sustainable collaborative relationship between Hunter College and Temple University and Fox Chase Cancer Center, but with a view to building a strong infrastructure that can enable us to do cancer health equity research. And then secondly, to develop underrepresented minority students and other kinds of trainees, including early stage investigators, even junior faculty members, so that they can participate in the cancer research workforce. And then finally, to enable us to engage with our community to be able to have impact on cancer health disparities. So it's just been a high point of my career to be able to lead this important program.
Thank you. Katie?
Well, I had the unique opportunity through moving up in the ranks of my faculty position to also be participating in the building of an interdisciplinary field called mobile communication studies. And after achieving my promotion to full professor, you're often thinking about, okay, what's next? And I've been really excited about the fact that I was able to connect through the Cuny Office of Research with an exciting new think and action tank called New America. And I have an opportunity to now sort of spearhead and participate with a bunch of universities across the United States to build a new interdisciplinary field focused on public interest technology. And so I received 2 years of grant funding to the College of Staten Island, specifically targeted for our extension of our campus, which is in the St. George community of Staten Island, that to really help move forward our mission, which is CUNY's mission, to provide access to and equity to higher ed for New York City residents. And we're really trying to build diversity into the tech talent pipeline. And I've been really excited about what my grant has afforded us in terms of looking at the intersections between access, equity, social entrepreneurship, and really embracing and community-based issues and social justice issues from a tech perspective.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie. Sonia?
Yeah, I feel so fortunate because when I saw this question, I had several responses in mind. And I think, you know, like Katie, I think the highest point for me was a grant that I received from a project that was funded by the NEH through the Initiative for Community Colleges and Humanities Initiative for Community Colleges. And in 2016, my colleagues and I at BMCC, as well as at Hunter College and Queens College, we had a cross-CUNY collaboration between the 2 years and the 4 years. We're able to design and implement a program called Building Asian American Studies Across the Community College Classroom. And it was a really innovative program that brought together faculty members from throughout the CUNY community colleges to participate in a faculty development seminar over a summer, through which we brought together scholars, artists, activists, community organizers, non-traditional scholars, and different, you know, the different types of people who are really actively engaged in knowledge production about Asian American communities in New York City and beyond. And that project really, what was so wonderful about it, it lasted from 2016 to 2018. But then since then, we have continued to, through the activities of the project, which were a seminar and then some classroom-based interventions. And then we also had a conference where we were able to support and highlight faculty members' research in this field. Since 2018, the network that we have grown through that project has continued to stay in touch. And particularly in this last year, there's been a lot of opportunities, unfortunately, for reconnection and to collaborate and think together about how we best support our students, what the world we live in, how we live in the world that we live in, and how this informs our research and our priorities as scholars, and other community-based interventions that we can support and encourage.
Great, thank you. Angie.
Great. So this, I agree, Sonia, this is a really fun question to have the privilege of answering. And so I think for me, the high point is what the work that we do at CUNY Central is very much a team effort. And so it's a group of us. And back in 2017, we were able to work with 5 local funders and access $6 million in grants for a kind of figment of our imagination at that time, set of opportunities that we call the CUNY Career Success Initiatives. And the idea was to be able to take the $6 million and start to build off of good work that was happening at colleges, but to really invest in scholars like Sean and Katie and Sonia. And so over the past 3 years, we've been really able to kind of think about economic mobility, think about what it would take to really change the trajectory of our students' lives even quicker and faster and better. And so with the funding that we typically grant back to the colleges, we've been able to support well over 60 faculty, programs that have touched literally thousands of students. And so we've been able to have school-based learning communities. We've been able to have faculty-based learning communities. We've been able to invest directly in course innovation. We've had specific career success projects. We have launched peer mentoring and a variety of other programs, really, as well as creating a centralized employer engagement system so that we can make life a touch easier for employers who really want to hire our CUNY talent from a variety of areas in the economy. So arts organizations and museums, to nonprofits, to government, to tech firms. And it was really exciting to be able to use this funding to use data also to articulate the needs and wants and desires of our students and to really give them a voice as well. And so it's been exciting to be able to sort of take this idea that was a notion that we had and really turn it into something where we're much better organized as a community on behalf of our students, with employers, with partners, and with funders.
That's really great. So from all of these, I can see so much public impact research. It's truly humbling. And again, just really grateful that you're all able to be here and join us and share these really important stories. So these are just examples of the wonderful public impact that happens all across CUNY. And as we all know, the year and a half has been very challenging and filled with ongoing uncertainty. How have these extraordinary circumstances affected the way that you engage with your scholarship? So Sean, we'll start with you again. That's okay. And again, if you want to pass, feel free.
No, it's fine. Thanks for asking the question. So In the beginning, around March 2020, when everything sort of came upon us as a surprise, we just had to stop everything, right? We stopped everything. We all went home. All of my staff in the program at the center, we all went home and decided that for now, all we could do was work remotely. Also, my laboratory at Hunter College at the Belfort Research Building, all of the students, we had them go home, and we transitioned our laboratory meeting to be on Zoom. We would meet once a week on Zoom, and we moved our focus from what we couldn't do, which is hands-on laboratory work, or in the case of my U54 program, some of the work we needed to do in the community and things that would require travel, in-person interaction with other people. We couldn't do any of those things. So we put our focus on things we could do, such as looking at our data that we had accumulated over the last year or two that had not been published, and thinking about what conclusions we can draw from them and what kinds of papers we can write with them. So we finished up a lot of papers that we had started to write. We started to write new papers, and in 2020, we actually increased the number of publications that we could put out as a group in the laboratory and as a program that's funded by the U54 grant. And in regards to some of our other programs that really need that in-person contact, as soon as the science improved in regards to COVID-19, and it was known what could be done safely. So for example, in the beginning, nobody knew about masks, but then as soon as the science said, okay, if you're wearing masks, you're protected, we brought some of our students back to the laboratory, following the capacity limit that was set, following physical distancing. So that started up gradually. And some of our other work that involved working with communities and with our colleagues, we started to do a hybrid approach where some of the activity will be remote, others will be in person. And if it was in person, some of the people will be participating remotely so that only few would be present in person.
Wonderful, thank you. Katie.
So personally, my area of expertise is in mobile communication studies and how it impacts social interaction and relationships. And in 2017, I published a book with Oxford University Press called Haunting Hands, Mobile Media Practices and Loss. And it's been somewhat emotionally overwhelming to see how some of the things that my colleague and I talked about in that book as it relates to how do people use their communication devices, their mobile phones and other forms of mobile media to mediate their grief and loss responses really took center stage during this global pandemic and continues to serve as a means of keeping connected to loved ones. And also, we're just starting to begin to see what kinds of, primary and secondary effects, in terms of having disrupted grief practices because of the lack of being able to share in those rituals in person. So the fact that that's my area of expertise, and then to see it kind of unfold, as well as the amplification of a lot of the ways in which we, my colleagues and I have been discussing how mediated communication impacts relationships, has been pretty intense. In terms of my specific work related to the grant that I have with New America and the building of a learning community of first semester students, coming from real underserved communities on Staten Island, and building a learning community with these students over the last year. I've gotten to see very much firsthand the challenges that a lot of our students at Cuny face in terms of how to strike that balance between cultivating your identity as a scholar alongside meeting the demands that life presents you and the challenges. And so it's been a real honor and privilege to be able to witness this and to have a foundation behind me that really wants to think about the role that technology plays in ameliorating as well as contributing to some of the ways in which our most vulnerable communities, continue to face disparities. For myself personally, it was really difficult for me to pivot my own high expectations for myself. So in terms of all of the objectives that I set forth in my grant proposal, kind of really clasping onto them very tightly in terms of really wanting to meet all those objectives. And I still have yet to let any of them go. But I have enormous compassion for my students and for other my colleagues that I'm working with. I've created a learning community of faculty as well, and enormous compassion for the challenges that we're facing during these times. And one of the unique things that I think is going to be not necessarily central to the project, but something that comes out of this is really helping us to imagine how do we support students' persistence and the retention of our most vulnerable students. And for me, I see that we're trying to create ways to operationalize persistence as an academic success outcome over those more traditional, maybe even biased ways in which we measure academic success, perhaps through standardized testing or GPA or all of those kinds of things. And so my students and I have been talking about how we need to celebrate their persistence, right? That the fact that I started with 22, and in a couple of days, hopefully, we'll have had 17 of the 22 meet that finish line, which I think is, pretty darn good for our first semester or first year students. And, just celebrating their persistence, I think, and all of our persistence. I hope that we have multiple opportunities when we start to be able to kind of regain a sense of safety and health, overall health, that we'll be able to celebrate our collective persistence at Cuny as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Sonia.
So in 2019, I received an ACLS, in the summer of 2019, an ACLS Mellon Community College Faculty Fellowship to start to work for a year and a half on a research project that I had been working on in fits and starts, and finally was able to allot some time to really delve deeply into my research, which was essentially a project about where and this is my current research, where I'm tracing a feminist genealogy of domestic violence as a public health matter. My research and other work for the past 20 years has been grounded in implications of different types of responses to the issue of domestic violence for immigrant communities, and particularly the role that the criminal legal system and criminalization of domestic violence has played. And so this project is one that I had been, actually, when I originally started graduate school in 2004, this is what I thought my dissertation would be about. But then 15 years later, I was able to come back to some of the core questions that had driven actually my decision to apply to graduate school, to really look at the role of health and medical institutions, their relationship with carceral institutions, and specifically looking at how understandings of mental health and what health and sickness are sort of shapes how we see social problems and who deserves support and when and how that support is distributed. And so when the pandemic started, so my project looks at legal cases, looks at policy and legal cases that involve immigrant survivors to analyze some of these relationships. But the majority of my research is really grounded in ethnographic research that is based in Queens, New York City, which is a set of communities that I've worked in for a long time, and also where I was born and raised. And so when the pandemic started, my ethnographic site was one of the hardest hit by the pandemic. And so I really had to rethink my role as a researcher as someone who is in relationship with this site and as a participant observer or observer participant, my primary goal as a researcher, but also as a community member, as like a neighbor, as a teacher, all the different roles that I play was to just maintain good relationship with my site and to think about what would be most supportive given the resources that I have and don't have, or the skills I could offer, or the documentation I could provide of what we were living through in that time. And so my research really took a pause during the sort of first months of the pandemic, during the period that was like the most heightened crisis. And I actually, although it was an incredibly stressful and scary time for so many of us, I think from when I think just about myself as a researcher, it was actually a really welcome opportunity to pause. I had been moving in small pieces, like small, as I said, like fits and starts towards this project wherever I could. And I felt like the pause actually allowed me to take some really necessary steps back to rethink the foundation of the project, to ask questions that felt really based in the conditions that we're living in today, and then think backward for some of the historical elements of my project, and to really rethink my research design to adjust to the conditions that we're in. So without giving up some of the goals that I had, but also being mindful of what is and is not possible in this time. And that actually those changes are in itself, were informed by the question, answered some of the questions that I was asking about what was actually, what was happening in this site that led me to change my questions, showed me a lot about the experiences of community members navigating questions of safety, health, wellness, and security in this time.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Angie?
Sure. And so 2020 was the year of the pivot. And if I never have to hear that word again, it wouldn't be unwelcome, but a lot of pivoting happening. And so before COVID, pre-COVID, our vision has been and continues to be creating a system that enables all CUNY graduates to earn a living wage within 1 year of graduation. And COVID really, just pressed accelerate on that goal and that vision, and kind of really trying to figure out how we could fulfill our promise to students, to their families, to their parents, to their communities, to really get jobs, to get good jobs at a moment in time where it wasn't really clear who was hiring. And so I think one of the pivots that we did, and kind of one of the ways that, whether it's from Sean's perspective, we sort of narrowed in, or from Katie's perspective, where it was hard to sort of say no because there was so much need out there, we ended up kind of saying, okay, we don't know who's hiring, but we're going to use this career success platform. And we do know the skills that folks are hiring pre-COVID. We know that skills are in demand after. And so we were really proud to create a new initiative called Upskilling. And we created this kind of upskilling challenge at CUNY. And I'm really proud of it because we were able to kind of build an infrastructure. We've sort of fundraised another $9 million to support this, to offer free competency-based training to every CUNY student, alumni, any New Yorker who wanted it. We sort of went out to the world of free training and curated it and sort of said, here are skills that are in demand in almost every economic sector you can think of, government, nonprofit, the private sector. Here's free ways that you can take the training. And to date, thousands of students, alumni, and other New Yorkers have taken advantage of it. So really quickly, I would say that, I don't like the words can't and won't, but sometimes you have to sort of think a little bit differently. And so I think that that's been an important lesson for us, that we're still kind of meeting this mission of preparing our students for really great jobs. But it looked a lot different than, if you had asked me if we were going to go in an upskilling direction in 2019, I probably would have said, probably not. And yet I'm really glad that we've been able to kind of do that.
Wonderful. So I could see a lot of adjustment everywhere, but I'll use Katie's word, also a lot of persistence and perseverance, and keeping the eyes toward the main thrust of the work, or remembering what that main thrust is, really. So wonderful, very, very helpful. So when you think about your scholarship journey, what role has mentoring played for you, and what role do you think it plays for your students?
I guess I'll start again, right? Okay. If I may, can I just add a small point to in regards to adjustments we made? This was a point I left out, but I think it's actually a very interesting thing that we're able to do. My primary interest is in cancer research. And of course, the U54 grant really helps us to do cancer health disparities research and to have impact, not just scientifically, but also in our communities. With the advent of COVID, part of the adjustment we did was actually pivot a little bit to address COVID-19 itself. So certain aspects of our grant allow us, as I mentioned before, to do community engaged research. So we did a couple of things. We got involved in talking about COVID-19 with our communities, talking about barriers to vaccination, even getting involved in mobile clinics for COVID-19. And this, of course, we did it in partnership with Temple University and Fox Chase Cancer Center. So I just wanted to mention that. In regards to the question of mentoring, that was your question, right? Okay. So in regards to the question of mentoring, I myself have benefited greatly from mentoring all the way from, going to graduate school. I was fortunate to go to graduate school at the University of East Anglia in Norwich, United Kingdom. And I worked with Dr. Ian Beals, and I learned a lot of things from him. He probably didn't realize how much I learned, but one thing that I know I continue to use now because of the mentoring that I received is sort of my approach to scientific writing. A lot of my colleagues talk about we scientists or researchers procrastinating with writing, and writing often is a challenge for many of us. But I picked up something from him. He just had a way of being able to get work out. He had that persistence, again, borrowing that expression that Katie used. He would get work out as soon as he could. And even if work that was written and submitted was rejected, he just had a way of never giving up. If necessary, changes will be made, if it wasn't possible to make changes in the underlying research that was done, he taught me that you might need to make changes in the audience you want to tell your story to, because some audiences don't think the story is important, or the findings are important, or the research was important, but it may be important to some other people. And so I learned that from him, and that has tremendously impacted my productivity in terms of publications, and that has had a positive effect on also grant funding. In regards to mentoring my students, I've been able to take some of those things I learned from my mentors to mentoring my students. So again, this example with Ian, I've sort of tried to transfer that to my students. But I remember another example, my postdoctoral mentor, Chen Liu, who is now the chair of pathology at Yale. He had an approach where for a postdoctoral fellow that really understood what they wanted to do and had skills in what they wanted to do. He allowed them to be independent and to be able to take the initiative. And if they thought something was important and interesting and they wanted to do it, he was able to give them the authority or show confidence in the ability to do it. But at least he allowed them to do it. And if they succeeded, of course, that paid off. But if they didn't, I guess. But I had that opportunity, and by means of that opportunity, I grew a lot. So I'm looking for students and trainees who also may have that ability to be able to sort of create some ideas and want to take those ideas and work with them. And if I see that, I allow them that independence to grow. And I see that that's beneficial for some. And then finally, I want to acknowledge a mentor who wasn't actually a subject matter mentor. I'm a cancer biologist by training. She wasn't that. Dr. Odedina at the University of Florida. she was a cancer disparities researcher. And so when I developed an interest in that field, she took me on, actually mentoring my first grant in that field, which wasn't funded, but came very close to being funded. You know, I give credit to her for that, and those kinds of things I'm trying to do to others as well.
Great, thank you so much, Katie.
So I love this question because I often talk about how I know I wouldn't be here without mentorship. As a first generation college goer, I really didn't have any idea what college was. And I attended Rutgers University, and Dr. Lee Jussum, who was my professor in social psychology, he offered to all the students in the class an opportunity to work in his lab. And I decided that I would take him up on that offer. And he really was the one who kind of helped me understand how to do research in psychology, and also to think about a path forward in terms of what graduate school meant. When I was ready to apply to graduate school, I really was seeking a program, a graduate PhD program that would fit me in terms of having a critical perspective on society and social justice issues alongside my love of psychology. And so I was drawn to the Cuny Graduate Center, where I was accepted into the PhD in social personality psychology, and I have had the enormous pleasure and privilege of having distinguished professor Dr. Michelle Fine as my mentor for most of my career, including up until now. And so I see the role of mentorship as critical, especially for first gens and for students of color who may not have opportunities, and for whom we have to be focused on in terms of the big we, all of Cuny has to be focused on in terms of really helping us improve our measures of racial equity. And one of the things that I'm learning through my project is not just mentoring, but also just authentic wraparound supports for students, I think is critically important. But we also cannot forget the role that peer mentoring plays, especially in places, especially for us at the College of Staten Island, we openly acknowledge our challenge in terms of representation, as our student body grows, thankfully, in around ethnic and cultural diversity. Our faculty have, the representation of the different diversity that we have within our student body isn't necessarily equally represented in our faculty. And so not to place, and we're working on that as an important institutional strategic priority, but it's also critical for us to really support the voices of students and cultivate peer mentorship. And so that's what we're trying to do in our project as well. And we're especially at our extension of our college in St. George. And my project is partnering with Howard University, and we're building a student-led PIT club, public interest tech club, to help empower our students of color to see themselves in the roles that they're actively imagining, right? That don't really exist yet in the world, that is at this intersection between advocating for social change and social justice and the world of tech. So.
Great, thank you. Sonia.
I was tempted to pass on this question because I think I have a complicated relationship with mentorship, and I think some of my my path was a little bit windy. In undergrad, I studied gender and women's studies and psychology, and then spent about a decade working in community-based organizations, and then came back to graduate school, actually at the Cuny Graduate Center. I got my PhD in sociology there, but my work is really interdisciplinary in the fields of gender and women's studies and Asian American studies and ethnic studies. So, my work and my life experience has put me in so many different spaces that sort of traditional mentorship often hasn't found its way to me, or I haven't found my way to it. I've been very fortunate in these different stages of my journey to have always, resources or people who I could turn to. But I think that what has been more my strategy has been to have sort of like a collection of mentors that are sort of actively working with me at any given point, and that has included senior scholars, non-academic elders who are part of communities that I work in, but definitely, building off of what Katie said, a peer mentorship network has been such an important part of all the different stages of my academic and professional journey, and is really what got me through graduate school. I also was someone who had very little experience with higher education in the United States. I didn't have a lot of kind of organic mentorship coming from like family or community. And so my peer mentors really were the ones who got me through the years where I really didn't know what I was doing. And I think that at BMCC, being a faculty member there, I tried to work with my students, learning from the lessons that I learned as someone who was seeking more clarity and mentorship often and wasn't able to articulate exactly what I needed. So one of the things that I work really hard to model for my students is that I will learn alongside them, and that I don't, I assume that I will also not be able to meet all of their needs. And so again, building off of what Katie was saying, I work closely with students to build their own peer support networks, peer mentorship networks, so that we can also think about learning and growth through a collective model and not so much the sort of individualized dyad that we're often encouraged to sort of think about learning and mentorship through. And so I think those are some of the things that I've been trying to practice.
Terrific. I'm glad you did not pass. The pathway of mentoring, there's not a pipeline, there's not a one shot. It's definitely more of a flower, a bouquet, I'll say. Angie, same question.
Sonia, I'm really glad that you didn't pass, because what you said really resonated with me. And I think what you and Katie in particular talked about was what I wanted to say. So I won't repeat a lot of what you guys have said, but we all need a roadmap, right? We all need to know the rules of the road, the unspoken rules, the undercurrents that are just not obvious. And so it's always incredibly, it's been always incredibly important in my own career to be able to have that opportunity. I do think as a first generation American, I always have felt like I'm on the outside looking in. And so to be able to have traditional or non-traditional people to just help us understand this is what's really going on is incredible. But what I'll say is we've spent a lot of time surveying our students in terms of what they get from structures, what they wish they got from structures, what works from the structures, and what doesn't. And I will give credit to really great colleagues at the Graduate Center at the CARA program, the College Access Research and Action Program. That's just outstanding. And we've worked with them around a lot of peer mentoring programs. And Lori Shajay, we were talking last week, and she sort of said, we want to move from this place where mentoring is really an entitlement for all, rather than available to some. And so I think that's my soundbite that I'd want to kind of give to answer that question. Entitlement for all, not just available for some. And I think that that's just incredibly important. And again, it can look and it can show and present itself in lots of ways. I happen to love peer mentoring because I think it's really helpful for our students. It's a big, affordable, scalable, resonant way to really help our students. And I'll say if I had a magic wand from a funding perspective, every single student at Cuny would get day one an academic advisor and a career mentor / advisor. I think it's just incredibly important, and our students are asking for it. And so when our students are asking for things, we should sort of meet them more than halfway and try to do what we can to really deliver.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Well, I'm sad to say we just have about 5 more minutes left. So I'm going to ask you all one more question. And if you could, give about a minute. I think it's a really important question, but I've learned so much from all of you. I'm sure so many others have as well. But what advice would you give to those who may be feeling a bit disengaged or discouraged at this time? In a minute. I know that's a Herculean task. But if you could, Sean.
Yeah, mine will be simple. See challenges or barriers as opportunities. Think about, okay, what is it that I didn't think about before that I could now think about and do? And I think I illustrated my thinking on this with the example of where we couldn't walk in the laboratory or work with our community partners or in-person work with our partners at other institutions, and then we pivoted to looking at our data, doing the analysis, writing up, completing papers that were incomplete, writing new papers. So see challenges or barriers as opportunities as best you can.
That's great advice. Katie.
The first thing that came, to my head, and Tamara, it wasn't a plant from you or anything like that, was trust science, because I think that there's something so healing. I'm, in case you didn't see my little title, I'm an ordained interfaith minister. So this might be like a minister question already. And I minister science essentially. But science can be that place of refuge. It can be that place of healing. It can be that place of hope and that really that place of dreaming. And so I would just say, yes, we've had, really challenging times and have suffered a lot and had to manage a lot of difficult challenges that may be sort of COVID related, but not necessarily directly related to COVID, just in balancing our life and our work demands. And so that we do need that time to kind of heal from all of that. But that should not discourage us from not thinking that we can't jump back into dreaming big, hoping big, thinking big, and pursuing those questions that maybe in this current environment might not seem so pressing, like, we have to be focused on this or that or this, but don't let go of those things that really excite you, that you're still really curious about, that you actively want to seek answers to, and that science, the beauty of science, provides us the means to do that. So.
Thank you so much. Sonia.
I was going to just say simply self-compassion in this time, creating space with trusted people to say all the things that you can't say in public, or when the stakes are higher, to really have an honest and authentic space of expression for what's on your mind, and the fears and anxieties. And echoing what Katie said again, I was also thinking about keep feeding curiosity. I think that in this last year, even when I've had to take pauses on my work, or things have moved in a different direction, I think keeping even just like a tiny connection to my questions or what has been motivating me, even if the scale of the connection really shrunk, having that ongoing relationship also made it more possible for when there was space to be able to come back in, as opposed to the sort of overwhelm of the relationship is over and now I have to start from scratch, but to be able to see that there is always a tiny pathway, even if that's all that's possible in the moment.
Really terrific. Thank you. Angie.
Real quick, give yourself time, take a summer vacation. We've been through a whole heck of a lot. One of the pieces that I really miss most about being in person that I look forward to is I always was really disciplined about meeting, I'd say every week, with someone who didn't work at Cuny, someone from outside the field to give me perspective. And I don't know about all of you, but I've sorely missed perspective sitting here in my son's green bedroom all for the past 16 months. And so being able to give yourself perspective with the people that you're meeting with, I mean, chances are if any of us are feeling something, everyone is probably feeling something pretty similar. And so trying to reconnect in many of the ways that my colleagues have stated feels incredibly important, even if it might feel uncomfortable or really putting yourself out there in a really vulnerable way. I think just reconnecting with folks from different areas feels really important.
Really great advice from all of you. Thank you all again for joining me in this fireside chat and sharing your experiences and your wisdom. It's been wonderful to learn more about you and your scholarly experiences. Now it's time to leave this fireside chat and continue with our evening of celebration and gratitude. And I'm very grateful. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much for this
so
opportunity.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Tamara, for doing a great job at moderating and keeping the fire warm. during that chat, as we really had inspirational colleagues. I want to thank them all for participating. I want to thank them because they inspire us with their research on their regular times, and to be able to listen to them now talk about their research, how they kept it going at this very difficult and challenging time, how they were flexible, how they went, where they went to get support and mentorship and energy at the times where it was challenging, and to get their advice and their words of wisdom and of solidarity and support was extremely encouraging, and they represent the very best that Cuny has to offer on the research side, and there's plenty to offer there. So thank you again to all of you for participating this evening. And now moving to the second part of our program, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce an honorable member of our Board of Trustees, the Honorable Martin Burke, who is the chair, as many of you know, of the University Faculty Senate, and an ex-official member of the Cuny Board of Trustees, and a long-standing faculty member here at Cuny. So, Trustee Burke.
Thank you, Chancellor. And on behalf of the 7,500 full-time and 8,500 or perhaps more part-time members of the faculty and the University Faculty Senate and the Council of Faculty Governance Leaders, I want to express our gratitude and appreciation for not only those who joined in tonight's webinar, but all CUNY faculty who have been acknowledged during this extraordinarily difficult year, nay, 2 years. The work you've done brings not only personal and professional repute to you, but it really aids in the mission of the university. It shows that despite the circumstances we've been in, you can work with students, peers, funding groups, make a difference now and continue to make a difference. So bravo and brava. On the point of making a difference, I'm here again on behalf of the aforementioned groups to say a few words about our Executive Vice Chancellor and outgoing University Provost, Jose Luis Cruz. When EVC Cruz, as we so informally refer to him, first came on after being named by the Chancellor as the new Provost, I had the opportunity to meet with him to talk about some of the concerns of the UFS, faculty in general, and to hear some of his ideas about where he saw his role in the administration and the university as a whole going. We discussed such matters as retention, time to graduation, and recruitment, all things which all of us would agree were good. We talked about the university's plans, still in an early stage of development, about taking a more aggressive stance in the university in terms of online education, and a range of other things. I'd already known EVC Cruz from Lehman College, and I was quite sure we had now what in the UK would be referred to as, quote, a safe pair of hands, unquote. Little did I realize that those issues would come back in rather dramatic ways quite soon. So by the dark days of late February and March 2020, EVC Cruz and his team at the Office of Academic Affairs really were able to put together clear directives for how CUNY on the academic, research, and teaching side, we're going to make it through the pandemic, and we're going to be able to see a new CUNY at the end of these dreadful, dreadful months. His academic continuity memos, which for the likes of me became required reading every few weeks, lined out in a fine-grained detail the policies that were needed in emergency, the policies that needed to be rethought for moving forward, and policies which were constantly made with the precision and the insight that you would expect from a career engineer. Well, he's now leaving, and we're on the verge of a new normal in which the university's profile and commitment to online education has increased, a new normal in which your ability and my ability to get research done in the labs, in libraries, and in other facilities of the university are going to bloom again, and in which the cool demeanor of Jose Luis Cruz really helped all of us to get through what otherwise, more than a few times, looked like an insoluble series of problems in a crisis made even worse by pressure in matters of public finance. So from my heart, I say to you, Jose Luis Cruz, muchas gracias. The skills, the insight, the integrity, and the perspicacity that you brought to this job, I'm sure you'll share with your colleagues, with your students, with the faculty, and the citizens at Northern Arizona State. We'll miss you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Martin. Muchas gracias to you for also your leadership and your support and during these very difficult months and for all you do for the university. So thank you. And it's my pleasure now to introduce the Executive Vice Chancellor, University Provost, Jose Luis Cruz, who will deliver the keynote address today. It is a short keynote address, so please stay tuned. As Trustee Burke mentioned, it is a little bit bittersweet to be making this introduction because although it is always fantastic to be able to hear from Jose Luis and to get insight from his vision, this is one of the last times that he's going to be speaking to us in his role as sort of Cuny's Executive Vice Chancellor and University Provost. As you heard, at the end of the month, he will be going up to Flagstaff in Arizona to serve as the president of Northern Arizona University. And everybody at Cuny knows how lucky the folks at Arizona are. EVC Cruz has been instrumental in helping us to achieve many of the things that we've been able to achieve over the last 2 years in academic, research, workforce areas. I think it's appropriate to have him as a keynote because although we don't get to appreciate that side of him, he is clearly an outstanding scholar. Some of you might know that he's a senior member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, a patented inventor, and in his own right in his career prior to coming to Cuny. He was an NSF Career Award recipient, which we all know is a very, very prestigious award. So a great distinguished scholar, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce him to give the keynote today. So Jose Luis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chancellor, and thank you, Trustee Burke, for your very kind and generous words. I want to really state my appreciation for Chancellor Matos Rodriguez for his steady and inspiring leadership of the people who have worked against the backdrop of a devastating global pandemic to advance the mission of the world's greatest urban university. I'd like to also extend my resounding congratulations to the 1,000 plus researchers, scholars, and innovators who are being honored here this evening. The collective impact of your work broadcast to the world that Cuny is and will continue to be committed as much to pushing the frontiers of knowledge and human creativity as it is to expanding opportunity for the historically underserved peoples of New York City. Tonight's celebration coincides with the 1-year anniversary of the national outpouring of protests in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. Protests that have impressed upon this nation's institutions the urgent need to address the racial injustice that manifests itself not only through state-sanctioned violence, but also through educational inequity, health disparities, and economic inequality. It is true that the verdict of Derek Chauvin's trial offered the whole United States, our whole nation, a taste of justice. But it is also true that we as a nation have a long way to go to dismantle the structures of racism and disrupt the systems of oppression. And it is clear from the portfolio of initiatives those honored here tonight are advancing that the City University of New York is leading the way as an engine of opportunity, a vehicle of upward mobility, and a driver of transformative change. I am especially mindful of the sacrifice inherent in your work, the long hours of ideation, proposal writing, reacting to reviews, negotiating scopes of work, finalizing budgets, recruiting students, staff, and faculty members, coordinating the launch of your projects, and investing your time, talent, and energy to the point of exhaustion. All in an effort to live the mission of the university you so love and to transform the lives of the communities you represent. I am also especially proud of how you help advance the concept of research, inquiry, and action as a fundamental human right, and help to empower our students and our fellow faculty and staff to exercise it. Because the right to question one's environment, be it the natural world or the social order, is a human right as great as any. For to question means to reason, to attempt to make sense of what is happening to us and all around us. The discoveries we make and the understandings we generate allow us to see the world in a new way and gives us the tools we need to change it for the better. You, the scholars and innovators celebrated here tonight, are the embodiment of CUNY's commitment to perfecting our union, our nation's democratic experiment, and improving our world. Thank you for all you do on behalf of so many, and congratulations on your accomplishments. It has been a pleasure to have been a part of the CUNY family, and I look forward to taking the lessons learned and values enacted at CUNY to Northern Arizona University. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Jose Luis. And as I have said, we're going to miss your contributions, your commitment, your words of encouragement to the entire university. And I'm looking forward to you bringing a little CUNY attitude and experience to Northern Arizona University. Now we want to use the remainder of the program to have a few distinguished guests who will speak about Jose Luis and his impact on all of us on CUNY. Jose Luis, before you start getting worried, this is not a roast. This is a serious group of colleagues. So let me begin by introducing the first one, who will be the president of York College, your former colleague at Fullerton, President Bernicia Johnson-Eanes. President Eanes, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good evening. So this is getting to be not the habit that I want to make, but I will continue, as I told him, to be his wonderful supporter in all that he does. So let me say first that I think that EVC Jose is very committed to focusing time, talent, and energy on the real work. I've heard that quote 1,000 times, and I want him to continue to carry it with him. He is innovative in his thinking and his commitment to social justice and to the work of public education and to higher education. He is dedicated to collaboration and committed to true leadership. And I believe that, as everyone says, Jose is one of the most profound thinkers that I have ever worked with. And if you have had that experience, it is very valuable. We will miss you deeply, but we also are so proud of you. And we are so appreciative of your deep understanding of systems, your deep dedication to the real work, and a real understanding that we're all working together. Though you won't be with us, we will still be all doing the work. And that's what's the most important. I want to also say that I am very, very gratified by all that you've done for Cuny, because I'm a Cuny returner. I went and came back and went and came back. And what you have done for this system has been wonderful. And I value you and all that you've done. We wish you well. But we also want to acknowledge your commitment to data-driven decisions and to making sure that the infrastructure in the central office is strong. And the foundation that you have set for the work that we're going to do ahead is powerful. So congratulations to you. I'm so, so, so happy for you and so, so sad to see you go at the same time. Thank you so much.
So I guess I'm next. Jose Luis, what can you say about the colleague that I've had the chance to work for the last 18 months? Let me first start by just letting you know a little bit about when I, as some of you might know, I had not worked in academia before. I've been on the board of a college, and when I was lucky enough to have the Chancellor give me this amazing opportunity, one of the things that I said to him is it's really very important that the Provost and I be aligned. And my very first meeting with Jose Luis, I didn't know Jose Luis. We went to a Mexican restaurant, and I really got a sense of what kind of person he was. And I knew then that he was going to become a great partner in this work. I'm here representing all our vice chancellors, but what can I say about someone who over this last 18 months have taught me a lot about what it is to work in this field. Someone who approaches work with so much passion, so much integrity. And at the core of all of it was the mission of this really amazing organization, this university. We, as leaders, we've never been tested like we've been tested last year. We very quickly, we had to turn this whole system around. And because Jose Luis was there to help me think through the issues connected to Wi-Fi for our students, laptops for our students, how to really help the system really go to distant learning, how can we support all our colleagues that were doing all the great work. He was a true partner in all of this. And really what I really enjoy the most about Jose Luis is he's a serious person, but he approached the job with even though he's not one to, he's a little more reserved. I always knew that he was a guy that I could approach. So around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, on the other side of 42nd Street, you would hear Jose Luis's music going. And I knew that was time that Jose Luis was that's the time where he was doing most of his thinking. And So I knew that there was an opportunity for me to go in there and ask him the many, probably from his lens, silly questions that I had to ask him connected to really the understanding the system from an academic perspective. And a guy that's had the experience in the work that he has done, taking time out to really sit down with me and sort of educate me on sort of how some of these things work, really make my job so much easier. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. I've learned a lot from you, Jose Luis. I really saw it firsthand. And then what's really also interesting, not only that he has an interesting taste in music. 1 minute, as a Latino, he's playing salsa. The next minute, it could be classical. You never knew what was going to come out of his playlist. But what's really interesting is going into his office. And this guy's an engineer. He approached a particular problem. You will go there and there was, first it started out with a couple of boards on one side of his board. Then there was a couple of more boards on the other side. Then there were a couple of more boards. And in each one of them, it was something he was working on to really try to make the system better, to think about how we could improve the experience for our students, to help our chancellor move his agenda forward. And I remember one time I was meeting with my facilities people and I said, we got to figure out how we could put some blackboards in the ceiling and how we could create a mechanism for Jose Luis to be able to, write in the ceiling. So we don't have any more place that we could put any more of these boards. But no, on a serious note, Jose Luis, I'm going to miss you. You've made an impact in my life professionally. I am lucky enough to be able to call you a friend now and know that anytime that I need some wisdom, even though, there's been some times where I've said some whoppers where Jose Luis has correct me. But I want to thank you for, the 18 months. Really enjoy the time we spent together. I'm here for you if you need me. Obviously, I now have a place to go to a lot of great golf courses in Arizona. So I'd be, knocking on your door with my golf clubs one of these days. But no, with all kidding aside, I want to wish you all the best to you and your family. And they're very lucky in Arizona to have you there. Suerte, mi amigo.
I think it's my turn. Just want to start by saying it's really my true honor to speak on behalf of the Office of Academic Affairs, to acknowledge Executive Vice Chancellor and University Provost Jose Luis Cruz, and ultimately to celebrate the incredible leader and colleague he's been to all of us. There's so many things about Jose Luis that are worthy of lifting up in a moment like this, and I think we've heard some of it. His deep commitment to educational equity and inclusive excellence, his exceptional intelligence, his demonstrated achievement of student-centered and data-driven policy and practice, his strategic focus on scale, impact, and quality, his ability to elevate and accelerate the work of everyone around him, his work ethic. Despite all that, and that's a whole lot, I actually this evening wanted to highlight another set of characteristics that have stood out to me since I started working with Jose Luis in 2019. And those are his devotion to family, his empathy, and his humility. And, I want to note that Jose Luis is a nationally recognized leader who often starts an introduction of himself by identifying as a father and a grandfather. He's a supervisor with the highest standards of excellence who models compassion, forgiveness, and generosity of spirit. And he's a consummate educator and administrator whose personal story is central to his professional journey. So on behalf of everyone within the Office of Academic Affairs, and I suspect well beyond it, I want to thank you, Jose Luis, for modeling this kind of leadership and believing in and creating a culture that recognizes that multidimensional people are at the center of all that we do. People, of course, in particular, our students, are why we work. They energize and inspire us. And we need a highly functioning community of faculty and staff who feel connected to mission. And we've heard this a couple times tonight, whose time, talent, and energy are greatly respected and strategically deployed to reach our greatest potential and to be the transformative engine of social mobility and social justice that we all know CUNY can and must be. So, there we are. On a personal note, if I may, I just want to thank you for trusting me to be a thought partner to you and ultimately for empowering me in all the most important ways. So with this, I think it is my honor to now pass the baton to Provost and Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs and Student Success at Lehman College, Peter Nwosu.
Thank you very much. 3 things summarize the person we gather here today to extend farewell to. First, we know Dr. Jose Luis Cruz as a visionary leader who cares deeply about our students, about equity, about social mobility. When he launched the 90 by 30 challenge in 2017 as Lehman's 3rd president to advance educational attainment in the Bronx, he noted as follows, and I quote, "If each of the estimated 462,000 Bronx residents over 25 who have a high school diploma or above, but no bachelor's degree, had a path to obtain one, the impact on the borough will be substantial." It is indeed a testament to the durability of this vision that the college continues to work towards the achievement of the 90 by 30 challenge. And that challenge is the organizing framework for Lehman's 2020-2025 strategic plan. Second, we know him as a design and systems thinker who believes that an institution comprises of a set of interconnecting units. It is this systems thinking perspective that has shaped how he has organized our student success work to include actionable data, people, structure, technology, policy, and process, all designed to increase scale, quality, and impact. At both California State University, Fullerton, and Lehman, where he served as president and provost respectively, he strengthened the use of actionable data to drive campus-wide conversations to accelerate student success outcomes in relatively short periods of time. Third, we know him as a gentle leader with a strong belief in shared governance and shared responsibility. He urged us to see ourselves as trustees of the institution, not as delegates. Delegates work in silos and focused mostly on their units. Trustees see themselves as stewards of the institution, all working together towards serving a shared vision and a shared purpose. He reminded us that we are here to be good stewards of other people's children, to educate them, to engage them, to empower them, so that they graduate to become independent thinkers and learners who seek to make a difference in their communities and beyond, through ideas and actions that matter. His warm and caring personality positioned him as the humble leader and the gentle giant we came to admire and respect. As we bid him farewell this evening, let us remember that Dr. Cruz's leadership was much about our students and about our faculty and staff than about him. His leadership was about how we can lift every voice and leave out the true meaning of our role as educators. As he reminded us at Lehman, we are a vital community of teachers, learners, scholars, and activists at the crossroads of a promise, dedicated to an ideal etched in stone by our founders of working together, and I quote, to enrich the human spirit and offer to as many as could realize their potential the opportunity to be so enriched. Thank you, Jose. We wish you all the best.
So thank you to Bernicia, to Hector, to Rachel, and to Peter for those beautiful and inspiring comments, inspired by Jose Luis and the personal relationships that we've had. Again, I want to thank Tamara and our speakers earlier in the program represent the very best that CUNY has to offer to New York, to the state, and to the world. We're going to end with a musical tribute. I'm going to introduce him in a moment, an extremely great performer, a student from Queens College who's going to play one of Jose Luis's favorite songs. So please stay tuned for that. I just want to say briefly two things. Our speakers earlier spoke about individuals that inspire them. And I've been so fortunate in my life to have an engineer who has inspired me, a graduate from the Colegio de Artes Mecánicas, the University of Puerto Rico in Maya West, someone who is incredibly proud of being Puerto Rican, a very proud father, a blessed man to have a brilliant and most personable wife, someone who was both a dedicated parent but a workaholic, and someone that was absolutely intolerant to injustice. And that was my father. And I used to tell my dad, and who I lost in January, that he would have absolutely loved Jose Luis, and I'm sorry he never got to meet him. And how lucky can you be to have in the same lifetime two individuals with some parallels that you admire in such a profound way and help you shape your life. So today is one of those days that this Zoom thing really stinks. And we do the best we can do. We talked about pivoting. We talked about doing the best we can, but I really wish that I had Jose Luis next to me and I could give him a hug. And a hug that would show him the respect, the affection, the admiration, the gratitude that I feel towards him. So before I make a complete fool out of myself, I am going to introduce our student performer, Xavier DeShields, who is a student from the Aaron Copland School of Music at Queens College, who will perform Jose Luis's favorite song, and I will not give you a spoiler. So, Javier, take it on.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and have a great evening.